A quiet every man recalls exists. The quiet following deceit. It's that instant you detect her falsehood, her suggestive act, her cunning. And rather than leaving, you exhale, justify, and claim it's all right. You convince yourself you're acting adult. You convince yourself this is what true men behave. Manage the rage, maintain harmony, save the love. Yet inside, a part of you perishes that never completely returns. The reality is harsh. The initial instance she slights you and you pardon her without repercussion, her love for you alters. Not due to a desire to harm you, but because females, aware or not, gauge a male's power by the defenses he maintains around his self-respect. When those defenses fall, she doesn't feel secure, she feels dominant, and no female can love a male she feels superior to. Every man believes he is acting honorably when he pardons the initial falsehood, the first open affront, the first, "it was only a jest." However, that isn't honor. It's a transaction. You're haggling with your own value, wishing she'll perceive your tolerance as affection. She will not. She'll view it as frailty, and frailty in a male doesn't arouse appreciation. It arouses scorn. You cannot love a person who silently scorns you, and scorn doesn't reveal itself with yelling. It begins with intonation, the mocking chuckle, the dismissive gaze, the casual remark that wounds more than a blade. It's her psyche probing your resolve, observing the extent she can warp you before you shatter. Males don't lament the large deceptions as much as they lament the initial minor ones they ignored, because that is when they taught her that pardon costs nothing. And as soon as pardon is free, so is irreverence. You were instructed that love signifies endurance, but that lesson originated from a society attempting to domesticate you, not fortify you. Love is not about soaking up limitless irreverence. It's about reciprocal esteem. And the instant esteem perishes, desire follows. No female can want the male she feels sorry for. Pardon isn't invariably compassion. At times, it's a silent capitulation. And the male who continues to pardon a female who slights him is not compassionate. He's vanishing. You can observe it in his gaze, that fading flame, that weighted look, that silent, weary resignation. He remains present in body, but in spirit, he has left. Because each instance he pardons what ought to have been a boundary. He isn't rescuing the connection. He's interring his manhood one concession at a time. And someday he'll awaken beside the very female he once battled to hold and understand he dislikes the person he is now. That is the true remorse. Not that she wounded him, but that he allowed it to persist. Each man believes he can overcome irreverence with love. He believes if he simply offers more, hears more intently, pardons more quickly, somehow she'll notice his core and yield. Yet love fails to change a female who has understood you'll endure everything. It warps you instead. Because pardon, when it's unilateral, ceases to be a merit and turns into gradual self-destruction. You commence diminishing in unseen ways. You begin withholding your reality, because truth ignites disputes. You begin concurring with things you don't trust because harmony seems more secure than conflict. You begin treading on sensitive ground in a home you finance with a female you once were proud to claim. And someday, you understand you exist like a visitor in your own existence. Males term it preserving the connection. Yet what you're truly preserving is a captive scenario where your affection is the payment. You remit in quiet, in tolerance, in stamina, wishing the tempest will subside. But tempests don't subside when you offer apologies to them. They simply discover you'll never abandon the coast. Here is the contradiction. Females don't forfeit respect because you make errors. They forfeit respect because you receive theirs without repercussion. The instant she understands she can violate your confidence and you'll remain present, she ceases striving to be deserving of you. She begins testing the limits of how far she can push before you at last depart. and due to your fear of her departure, she gradually forfeits you without realizing it. Pardon generates a mirage of power, but it conceals fear. The dread of isolation, the dread of beginning anew, the dread that nobody else will cherish you. That dread is the armament she needn't even wield. You cannot erect a realm with a monarch who persists in igniting the ramparts. You cannot discover tranquility in a household where pardon has turned into the sole dialect used. And still, males remain, not due to their blindness to the harm, but due to being conditioned to view departure as defeat. But departure is not defeat. Remaining is. Because remaining signifies you prize the mirage of affection over the actuality of self-worth. Allow me to state something that will strike painfully but mend more profoundly. When she slights you and you pardon her without repercussion, she doesn't believe you're benevolent. She believes you're vanquished. And no female can love the male she has vanquished. Because the feminine spirit solely flourishes in esteem, and esteem cannot survive where capitulation lacks meaning. This is the reason males who continue pardoning the unpardonable become empty. They cease to know themselves, they cease to voice dissent, they cease to demand regard, and when they at last do, it is past time. Because the female no longer perceives them as a male, but as ambient sound. You cannot recover from deceit by demonstrating you're powerful enough to withstand it. You recover by demonstrating you're powerful enough to depart. Because pardon without repercussion isn't adulthood. It's psychological self-injury disguised as tolerance. There is a pivotal moment in each connection where an unseen thing alters. You don't invariably detect it as it occurs. It isn't noisy, it isn't theatrical, it's silent, nearly tranquil. It is the instant she understands you will not depart. And from that instant forward, desire starts to perish. A female cannot sense fervor for a male she does not esteem. She can rest near you, consume your provisions, share images of you, even utter "I cherish you." But far in her psyche, a core element transforms. You transition from being her male to being her psychological support system. She no longer yearns for you. She endures you. It begins discreetly. She ceases pursuing your validation because she is already aware she can forfeit your confidence and you'll nonetheless remain. She ceases adorning herself for you. She ceases hearing you. She begins cutting you off, amending you openly, mocking you. And when you challenge her, she labels you uncertain. It isn't uncertainty. It's lucidity. You've simply at last understood you're not being cherished anymore. You're being endured. Males frequently believe desire perishes due to habit or duration. It does not. It perishes when a female ceases to believe you are able to depart. Because the male essence that females desire is not solely power. It's decisiveness. It's the unstated knowledge that your affection is potent. But it is not boundless. It's understanding that you might cherish her profoundly, yet still release her if she violates that affection. As soon as she perceives that your pardon is reflexive, she forfeits her dread of forfeiting you. And when that dread perishes, so does her esteem. A male who cannot declare stop gradually turns unseen by her. She will nonetheless accept your funds, your exertion, your hours. But she will bestow her esteem somewhere else. And no connection can endure as soon as esteem exits the space. I've witnessed it too frequently. The male who pardons the suggestive behavior, the irreverence, the delayed responses, the psychological ploys. He continues wishing his tolerance will restore her to her former self. But it never succeeds, because you cannot revive desire through concession. You revive it through non-presence. When you vanish, she senses your worth. When you persist in appearing after being slighted, she senses your hopelessness. And females do not cherish hopeless males, they utilize them. You believe you're demonstrating loyalty, but you're instructing her that irreverence carries no cost. You're revealing to her that your allegiance isn't a present. It's a snare you've constructed for yourself. And here is the grim paradox. She will probe you more intensely each instance, not due to a desire to harm you, but due to her pleading for evidence that your power yet remains. And when she fails to locate it, she commences grieving for the male she formerly esteemed. That is when she begins to alter. Less fondness, diminished esteem, diminished concern. And someday, when she at last departs, she will inform you of something that will break you. I simply don't sense the same way now. What she truly implies is, I ceased esteeming you the day you pardoned what I ought to have faced consequences for. Pardon doesn't restore affection. Limits do. Pardon doesn't reconstruct desire. Pardon turns into a constant occupation, and tranquility becomes an indulgence he cannot anymore sustain. You can invariably recognize when a male has pardoned excessively. His chuckle seems strained. His self-assurance feels practiced. His gaze shifts about when she speaks, gauging the climate of each statement. He isn't existing any longer. He's coping. And coping is not affection. It's endurance. Males who pardon ceaselessly think they're rescuing the connection. But what they're actually doing is instructing her that she can demolish the base, and you'll nonetheless reconstruct it for her. She is unfaithful. You accept her return. She slights you before other people. You allow it to pass. She violates limits. You redraw them narrower. In the finish, there's zero remaining to protect because you've pardoned away your whole stronghold piece by piece. You turn into what every powerful female covertly scorns, foreseeable. She understands your subsequent action before you do. She understands that regardless of her actions, your dread of her departure will prevail. And that is the instant she forfeits the psychological desire that formerly drew her to you. Because strength without repercussion turns into powerlessness, and females can sense it. Pardon carries a price, and it's invariably paid with male coinage. Your concentration, your ambition, your authority, your lucidity. Every concession you receive without alteration siphons something essential from you. You cease guiding. You begin responding. You cease demanding regard. You begin pleading for tranquility. And when a male begins pleading for tranquility in a connection he constructed, he's already forfeited the realm he formerly governed. Here is the most difficult reality. She will not alter because you cherish her more intensely. She'll solely alter when your affection has boundaries, because boundaries establish order, and order is the one thing females esteem more than sentiment. When she perceives that your pardon has a limit, that irreverence results in separation, that deceit concludes the narrative, abruptly she perceives your value once more. But for as long as she understands, she can break your heart and still discover you anticipating with an embrace. Your pardon turns into her preferred armament. Some males forfeit funds. Others forfeit time. But the true catastrophe is the male who forfeits his own self. He ceases to know his own image, that weary, civil iteration of his person who once had flame in his gaze. Now he simply maintains harmony. He pardons. He withstands. He wishes she'll someday perceive how faithful he's been. But allegiance without limits doesn't render you honorable. It renders you unseen. And being unseen is how males perish gradually. Not in body, but in spirit. You cease requiring greatness from your own self because you're overly occupied enduring turmoil from her. You cease envisioning because each discussion concludes in psychological battle. You cease trusting in tranquility because you've confused depletion with affection. Allow this to register. The more time you pardon what wounds you, the more you condition yourself to require anguish just to sense linkage. That is not affection. That is dependency. You are not linked. You are injury-linked. You are not cherishing. You are in deprivation. You are not pardoning. You're vanishing. True power isn't in the amount you can withstand. It's in how plainly you can state, stop. Because the male who can pardon ceaselessly is not the most powerful. He's the most fearful. Fearful of beginning anew, fearful of isolation, fearful of perceiving the reality that she ceased prizing him long ere he ceased pardoning her. Each man arrives at a shattering point, though not many concede it audibly. That instant, when you understand your tolerance hasn't mended her, your affection hasn't yielded her, and your pardon hasn't altered her. It's the instant your spirit at last murmurs what your consciousness has been evading. She is not worthy of a further opportunity. Initially, it seems like failure. You convince yourself you're stopping prematurely, that perhaps this instance will be distinct. That affection signifies withstanding anguish. But anguish isn't evidence of affection, it's proof of disparity. And when a male's pardon continues nourishing a female's ruin, the connection ceases to be hallowed. It turns into a gradual burial for his essence. This freedom commences the day you cease clarifying why you're wounded and begin resolving you're finished. It isn't noisy. It isn't a conflict. It's a silent reversion to your own power. You begin moving distinctly. You begin reasoning lucidly once more. You cease justifying yourself to a person committed to misconstruing you, and that quiet, the one she formerly construed as frailty, turns into the exact thing that frightens her. Because quiet, when it originates from a male who has at last reached his limit, is strength embodied. This, you will observe it in her gaze the instant you don't detest her. You won't pursue vengeance. You'll merely comprehend that tranquility requires separation, and you'll be prepared to remit it. That is the day pardon converts from a prison into an instrument. Because you at last comprehend, you can pardon a person without ever permitting them close to you again. You can release resentment without unsealing the entrance that shattered you. You can cherish what existed without forfeiting your identity. That's the type of pardon that mends, the type that concludes, not reignites, the anguish. Each male who has ever departed from what was destroying him understands this reality. Departing isn't frailty, it's renewal. You don't depart because you ceased cherishing her. You depart because you commenced cherishing your own self. And the male who cherishes himself is formidable. He's not any more controlled by culpability, lured by turmoil, or constrained by concessions that never result in alteration. He moves with silent command, the type that requires no validation. Because the male who has perfected separation has perfected strength itself. Note, and here is the marvel nobody informs you about departing. Existence floods back in. You begin chuckling again. You begin resting again. You begin perceiving how burdensome the connection had grown only when you're not bearing it anymore. You begin re-establishing ties with companions, interests, ambitions, all you forfeited to hold a female who didn't even desire to remain. You commence to comprehend that pardon isn't meant to ensnare you. It's meant to liberate you. Each man must grasp this teaching one time. You don't pardon to mend her. You pardon to mend you, because your tranquility, your time ahead, your self-worth, those hold more value than any connection that requires your ruin to endure. There's no prize in being ceaselessly empathetic. There's solely depletion, and depletion is not affection. Thus, if you're hearing this at this moment, questioning if it's the moment to cease pardoning, believe your physique. It is already aware. That constriction in your torso each instance you pardon what wounds you, that is not affection. That's your essence pleading for release. Depart. Allow her to question. Allow her to understand what she forfeited. Allow her to confront the quiet she produced. You do not owe her finality. You owe your own self-tranquility. Because true affection doesn't render you lesser. It renders you more powerful. And pardon isn't meant to deplete you. It's meant to liberate you. So pardon her indeed. But pardon her by releasing her. Pardon her by declining to enact the identical part anew. Pardon her by recovering your self-worth. Why? Because the male who grasps departing without malice has already triumphed. And if this communication found you this evening, if you sensed it in your core, If you perceived yourself in this phrasing, then distribute it.